Japan's $100 billion world's fastest high-speed train. With every step towards a better future, Japan has always been a pioneer in the field of technology and innovation. Starting from innovative gadgets to building AI, from electric cars to bullet trains, the country's journey towards modernization has been fascinating. Today, Japan, with its innovative technologies, has built the world's fastest high-speed train. And that's exactly what we're going to look at in this video, so stick around till the end and enjoy the ride. It all started back in the 1960s when Japan took its creativity to the next level by developing an advanced high-speed train. Japan's iconic bullet trains could operate at over 200 kilometers per hour. Thus, they revolutionized high-speed trains around the globe. When it first connected Tokyo and Osaka over half a century ago, trains could only go at 210 kilometers per hour. But nowadays, trains can travel up to 320 kilometers per hour, conveying over 1 million passengers every day. The Japanese are now attempting to repeat the feat. The Shinkansen train has been a source of national pride in Japan since its introduction in time for the 1964 Olympic Games. Japan is banking heavily on the Shinkansen Maglev line, which will run at 600 kilometers across the 178-mile route between Nagoya and Tokyo, cutting traveling time down to just 67 minutes. Now you might be wondering, is this actually true? Well, trust that it is. Japan's cutting-edge Maglev train set a new global speed record in a test run near Mount Fuji on Tuesday, breaking beyond the 600 kilometers per hour barrier as Tokyo tries to sell the technology abroad. The train is built on superconducting magnets that can lift the train up to 10 centimeters with very little friction. However, this is one of the most costly transportation projects in history, as well as a huge wager on technologies that even have yet to be verified. The building costs for these exclusive lines are extremely high. $100 billion for just the route to Nagoya, with more than 80% of the track anticipated traversing via expensive tunnels. Japan is attempting to market its Shinkansen bullet train and Maglev train systems outside of Japan to generate more revenue through construction exports. It's also being asked whether or not constructing the fastest train in the world is truly the best use of resources. To be honest, even when the country's very first bullet trains commenced their operation back in 1964, Japanese engineers were already working on a new kind of train. The technologies that are at the cutting edge enable bullet trains to operate at much higher speeds than were once considered possible. While there was still much more room for them to run faster, engineers understood that trains would eventually reach a speed limit. When conventional steel wheels run up against resistance, friction, vibration, and sound levels would become way too great. They would need to have a new type of train in order to go much faster. To reduce rail friction, engineers should eliminate the wheels entirely, and instead, lift the train inside the guideway using a magnetic force. The concept of magnetically lifting the train had been there since the 1900s, with the very first patents arriving back in 1912. But making such a train would actually require new technology. In the 1960s, we're just starting to come together. Japan and Germany appeared as leaders in maglev experiments, both spending extensively on their own versions of the technology. By the 1980s, prototype maglevs were shattering speed records and promising to transform train travel. By the 1980s, prototype maglevs were shattering speed records and promising to transform train travel. However, it would have to be another 2 decades until the first high-speed maglev was put into service. But it wasn't until 2004 that it actually happened. With the inauguration of the Shanghai Trans-Rapid System, maglev trains had finally surpassed traditional trains as the world's fastest trains. Maglevs based on German technology regularly reached 430 kilometers per hour on the line, joining Shanghai to its airport. But despite the fact that it opened nearly 2 decades ago, it is still the sole high-speed maglev in operation. As much as the rest of the world has abandoned the technology, there were once grand ambitions to generate high-speed maglev lines all over the globe, with some forecasting that thousands of kilometers would be built in North America alone by the 2020s. However, none of those proposals came to action. The issue is that maglevs are much more expensive than traditional high-speed trains. They are 2 to 3 times more expensive to build and do not work with existing infrastructure. High-speed trains, on the other hand, can utilize over 1 million kilometers of existing conventional rail lines, as well as stations built in almost every city from 1964. Over 50,000 kilometers of high-speed rail lines have already been built, with the number anticipated to rise in the next few decades. In comparison, less than 100 kilometers of maglev lines were completed in the same time span, indicating that the globe has progressed. Japan, on the other hand, continues to march forward. The big gamble on maglev technology made by Japan begins with geography. The Central Japan Railway System is building the world's first intercity maglev line, which will link the country's two largest cities, exactly as the first bullet trains did way back in 1964. However, where today's fastest bullet trains take 2.5 hours to travel from Tokyo to Osaka, the new maglev route will only take around 67 minutes. And it implies that 3 cities with such a total population of even more than 18 million people would be placed within commuting distance of one another, thus merging them into a single gigantic city. This will be a level of mobility that will enhance Japan's whole economy. However, there are other, more compelling reasons to construct the additional line. Every day, approximately 500,000 travelers travel on the existing Shinkansen line. Bullet trains, on the other hand, are frequently spaced just 3 minutes apart. It is nearing the end of its useful life, as is the infrastructure, which is nearly 60 years old. A current line also traveled across Japan's most earthquake-prone areas. A catastrophic earthquake might disrupt the country's most vital rail link, resulting in massive financial losses. Instead, the maglev line will travel a much more direct path between the big cities, passing through a mountain area that is far less seismically active. It also means that about 80% of the route will be tunneled, with some of which measuring 25 kilometers long and 1.5 kilometers underneath the ground. The first part is planned to begin in 2027, with the existing connection to a sucker, which is expected to be finished a decade later. When all is said and done, Japan's high-speed maglev trains will be the fastest form of transit between the country's major cities, even faster than flying. Now that's a pretty solid claim by the country itself. The technology that allows for such incredible speeds has already been under development for more than 50 years. SC Maglev, which stands for superconducting maglev, uses electromagnets that are cooled to high temperatures to lift trains off of the guideway, in order to benefit from a phenomenon known as superconductivity, which raises magnetic force dramatically. The electromagnetics in the train interact with coils buried inside the guideway. One set of coils is being used to push the train, while the others are being utilized for lifting and guidance. SC maglevs must initially accelerate to 150 kilometers per hour on wheels before producing a magnetic field that allows them to levitate, since the second set of coils is powered. Once the trains are moving at a consistent speed, they dynamically maintain stability, requiring no active methods to keep them stable or centered. The trains are also totally autonomous, being controlled by the track rather than a driver, making crashes nearly impossible. In addition to having 3 different braking systems, they are also capable of stopping more quickly than conventional trains. This truly is a train from the future, and it'll be the most demanding maglev's implementation to date. However, it makes sense to construct this, as Japan has been developing its frame bullet trains for nearly 60 years. They're now regarded as some of the world's most modern, reliable, and efficient high-speed trains. Some have questioned whether the switch to maglev is more of a blunder than a step forward. To begin with, SC maglevs are smaller in practically every dimension than bullet trains, which means they will carry fewer passengers and travel less frequently. Maglev switches, which allow maglev trains to change tracks, are substantially slower than traditional rail switches. As a result, maglev trains must be spaced at a minimum of 10 seconds apart as compared to just 3 minutes of bullet trains. Because the trains are smaller and travel less often, Japan's maglev system will never be able to compare to the capacities of a normal bullet train, all the while consuming a lot more energy below 300 kilometers per hour. The energy consumption of a bullet train and a maglev is not significantly different. However, operating at 500 kilometers per hour adds significantly higher air resistance, which is amplified by the majority of the journey being via tunnels. This means that running bullet trains twice as fast will need 4 times as much energy. And the project will be extraordinarily expensive in Japan's history, costing at least 5.5 times as much as the original bullet train line from 1964. Due to the substantial tunneling involved, as well as the cost of constructing entirely new stations situated next to or below existing ones, the majority of the work will go towards tunneling. SC maglev technology, according to reports, may be transported to the rest of the world. The entire world has given up on Germany's Transrapid, a fast train using unconventional means, in favor of conventional high-speed trains. Perhaps the only country doing more research on ultra-high-speed maglevs are China and Japan, which will probably reveal their prototypes in 2021. While renewing its commitment to enlarge its conventional high-speed rail network by thousands of kilometers, The country has recently stated that it will be expanding the network by tens to thousands of kilometers by the end of the decade. While there are plans to use SC Maglev technology in other countries, the reality is that few countries have Japan's mix of money, population density, and hunger for massive infrastructure projects. Many people are wondering if Japan's massive investment in Maglev will ever pay off. Many scoffed at the Japanese decision to spend billions on building the first bullet train. Railways were thought to be a dead technology that would not be able to endure in the modern day. The world's first high-speed railway was a huge success, and the rest of the countries quickly followed with their very own big high-speed train projects. Japan's upcoming quantum leap is the SC Maglev, which operates at much higher speeds than conventional trains. It will be more comfortable, cleaner, quieter, and safer than any train prior to it. But, on the other hand, these benefits must be balanced against incredibly huge development and infrastructure expenses. The story of SC Maglev has not been written yet, and it's still unclear whether the project will usher in a new era of high-speed ground transportation, or if it'll end up like earlier unsuccessful attempts to reinvent railways. So what do you think? Do you think Japan's Shinkansen will deliver promising results? If so, what do you think China's reaction will be? How do you think China will take this matter and play it along? Let us know your opinions down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys, and make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on that post notification bell so you'll always be notified whenever we release a new video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.